Can you turn the volume up on this thing? Or should I turn you? Hey, is my air conditioner coming through the background?
I can hear you. No, you're fine.
Leave it on. Leave it on. Just turn the volume on. There we go.
Okay, guys, we are live.
All right, what's up, everybody? Hello.
Yo.
Hello.
Episode of Police Off the Cuff After Hours. My name is Mark DeMayo. I'm your host. I'm with my partner, my co-host in all things law enforcement. What's up, Bill Cannon?
How you doing, man? What's happening?
I'm doing great, man. I'm very excited tonight. We got a great guest. What do you think? Should we just bring him on board, or do you want to do
mention our Patreon first. We got to get paid, man.
All right, so we launched our Patreon on Monday, and we're very happy to announce that we have some subscribers. It's not a complete loss. So Bill wanted to do like a roll call, and we'll do that for our new subscribers if they like. And we appreciate the people who have come on board. So Bill, do you want to do the roll call?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank. We have 3 levels of our Patreon. If you know what a Patreon is, we're actually asking our audience to pay to watch us. But the Patreon gets extra things. Like, for example, Mark is going to start doing a weekly current events video, 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm going to start doing a true crime episode, probably 2 to 4 possibly per month for our Patreon members. So you're actually getting some extra programming from being a paid Patreon member. And we have 3 levels. The first one's called the bucket, because the bucket is the lowest level. That costs $7 a month. The second level is polish my rack, and that costs $9 a month. And the highest level, of course, if you ever watch this show, is dipped in butter, and that costs $11 a month. And actually, we have more people going for the dipped in butter because they know it feels so good to dip them in butter. And I'd just like to shout out to the people. I'll shout them out by name, except that I know the person wouldn't like their name shouted out. David George, thank you. John the Sniper. Phil Ross, my father-in-law actually became a dipped in butter member. Kerry O'Connell. My son Casey Cannon, who I spent $150,000 paying for his college education. He went for $7 a month. Matthew Cutler, Nicholas Marshall, Pinky Doe, doesn't want to be known by her real name. Christopher Strom, thank you, Christopher. Brooklyn to Baghdad, all the way. Matthew Kastler, Aaron Rodriguez, and Sean Lisco. Thank you guys so much. And if you could possibly dip them in butter, go for that 11. It's going to be worth it. Thank you so much.
All right, so we'll probably bring that up one more time. And the other announcement before we start is this Saturday, right? Is the rally?
At 12 noon at City Hall Park. Scott LeBedo.
My thin blue line shirt. It's a beautiful shirt. I love this. Scott LeBedo has put together a huge rally that's going to take place downtown. The meeting place is City Hall, and we have him up on our Instagram wall. You can hear, you can look at his art, and you could also hear him promoting this weekend. So it's on our Instagram, Police Off the Cuff Instagram. Check that out. And if you're not doing anything Saturday, go down there, man. Join the rally. It's
the blue.
Yes. And without further ado, we're going to bring on our guest. It's an honor to have him here. He's a retired member of the service. He was the Manhattan South Night Watch Sergeant. He's made appearances on the TV show Perfect Murder. He was on the job for 39 years in 2 months.
Ouch.
Couldn't make the 40, huh? What's up, Sergeant Pete Panuccio? What's up? How are you?
How are you?
Did I say the last name right? I hope so.
You got it right.
Panuccio. All right, good, man. I'm happy to have you.
Glad to be here.
Where are you?
I'm at a secret, undisclosed location.
Are you in America?
I am in America, in my living room.
All right, good.
How's it feel? Does it feel liberating to be retired? 39 years. Did you get a psychological evaluation?
I had a few of them over the years.
Because being on that job for 39 years, you definitely need one, I think,
Yeah, you know what? It feels good, though. I have to tell you. I was a little scared. Don't get me wrong. But, it was just time. And then once after you're out, well, I did night watch for 10 years. So all
So
of a sudden,
you sleep upside down in your closet?
actually in a coffin. I have a coffin with dirt in it from Transylvania that I close. And
Well, can you explain to us what Night Watch is for those of the law enforcement and not the civilian listeners that are not from New York?
Yeah, Night Watch is basically we handle all of the detective stuff between 1 a.m. and 8 a.m. My specific area was Manhattan South. We worked jointly with the guys from Manhattan North. We spent a lot of time up there, especially this year with the shootings and stuff. But anything that rolled in the door that would require investigation, we would go out on. Bad assaults, shootings, homicides, shots fired, DOAs. Something different every night, which was one of the more rewarding aspects of the job. At 8 o'clock in the morning, you pass it off. You do your work, and then the local detective squad picks it up.
Pete, you know what's funny? I remember, being up in the north, I used to have to cover Night Watch every once in a while, and the north would be rocking, and the south they'd be, and I would say, hey, they're coming up to the north. So I'd call the south and say, hey, guys, you got to go up to the 3-4. And they'd be like, we're from the south. I go, I don't give a fuck where you're from. The north is rocking. You guys haven't had a single job. Take off your slippers, put your shoes on, and get up to the north.
Yeah.
They didn't like me at all.
You know what, though? It's changed. It changed a lot in the last 10, 12 years. We had some good bosses up there. It was one borough at one time. You had, up until about, I want to say 2007, you had the one team up in the north. And really, it was not nearly the coverage that you needed. Manhattan South, everything bad Manhattan South happens after 4 o'clock in the morning. Right. That is when you're going to get bizarre phone calls, people falling in front of trains, you name it, suicides. And prior to the lockdown, that's where all the drunks are stumbling out of the bars. And then, now it's hunting time. And burglars. We got burglars in the South up the wazoo. It's out of control.
So Pete, tell our audience what Manhattan South is, the geographic area.
It's 59th Street, east to west side, from 59th down to the Battery. The one thing about Manhattan South is when something happens in Manhattan South, it's the lead story in the morning. All right,
it's national news. It's like national news when it happens.
Yeah, you could have 7 people shot in Brooklyn, nobody cares. Yeah, you get somebody, whatever. It doesn't even have to be a really well-known person. Get somebody cut or fair to mid-level wannabe star. Lindsay Lohan was she was a frequent flyer with us with her antics in Manhattan South. But that will dominate the news. It'll become international news.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff was she doing? No, like what would she get? What would you get called for with her? What kind of?
She was prone to running people over. Actually, did she hit the guy? She sort of tapped him, but it was international stuff.
Yeah, but there's a lot of guys who run right in front of your car over there too.
Oh yeah.
That happened. I had that happen. Some guy timed it perfectly, but he didn't know I was going to look at my phone, so I just stopped for a second. He just ran right past me.
Yeah, and then you screwed his whole day up. He was counting on you. Billy will tell you I'd say about 10, 15 years ago, that was especially in the 19th precinct. These mutts will go out and you see a guy riding by in a Bentley. They have an old shitbox car and they crash into the guy. And next thing you know, everybody's there holding their neck. And it's like, call my doctor, Jacoby and Myers, and they were targeting people with expensive vehicles. Wow. You'd roll, especially in a patrol boss, I'd roll up on the scene with some of these things. Like, yeah. And I'm like, yo, dude, pack your shit, all right? Say it walking, all right? A lot of it, you knew what it was.
Pete, Pete, what's amazing is, and you have been in the detective bureau for a long time, is that if a really complicated case occurred in Manhattan North, no one gave a shit about it. But if it happened in the South, everyone from the chief of detectives up to the police commissioner wanted to run the case. right?
Oh, without a doubt. And you know what? Well, except for the 19th. The 19th and sometimes the 2.
Right. The 19th had the same problems with that.
Yeah, the 19th was really just an extension of Manhattan South.
That's up, yeah.
The 19th, every day was with the phone calls and do you know who I know and this and that. Politics, you know, on routine cases, you know, phone calls would come in from wherever and just really ramping up the pressure on something that's basically pretty routine.
Right.
You spent a lot of time in the 19th and you saw what went on down there. And
Unbelievable, you know.
you
You
get,
forgot that you knew how to investigate a homicide when you got there. Like,
well, you would
they
get
had to tell you how to do it, you know.
you would get a homicide in the 19th that could be no different than a homicide in the 2-8. And the pressure, the phone calls, the yelling, the screaming, you know, and usually as a supervisor, one thing I always, especially we had a great crew of detectives in the 19th precinct, really good people, guys that you know very well. All you had to do was just leave these guys alone and let them do their job.
Remember the Felix Brinkman murder, the Holocaust survivor?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was like, it was a great case and we solved it quickly, but they abused the shit out of the doorman who was a witness.
Yeah.
We were waking him up at 5 and get him in now, get him up, bring him in at 4:30. No, bring him in at 4. You know, and they were like, that's the way to kill a witness, but they almost killed the witness.
Well,
right?
the prime example of that was the realtor to the Stars homicide on Fifth Avenue. A certain chief of detectives at the time, a guy, you know, who read a lot about detective work, and you know,
Never did any, but he read a lot of books about it.
you know, that's where you kind of separate things. And what was ordained as to what he wanted done with that case. You know me, I've been around, dealt with a lot of stuff over the years. I have to tell you something. I was talking to the squad commander at the time who was catching massive abuse. And I'm sitting there holding my head and I says, I'm ready to start. I'm going to break down in tears over building canvases. When that was all said and done, we had 4,800 apartments they wanted canvassed. They wanted everybody ID'd. They wanted everybody interviewed. 2,300 cab drivers on top of that we tracked through GPS. They wanted them interviewed. 10 years later, I'm sure there's still cab drivers calling the 19th Precinct Detective Squad saying, hello, you want to talk to me?
And then the case, there was like 20 case folders of 100 DD5s, right?
That was the case that broke the system down. The entire system, we crashed ECMS multiple times.
What case was that?
That was a lady that was murdered in her apartment on Fifth Avenue. Found dead in the apartment. And I don't like using the term, it was a great case because somebody's dead. But as cases go, it was an amazing case. We had 40 people on the 40 people on the day tour, 40 detectives on the 4 to 12, 16 detectives on the late tour, the first couple of weeks for that case. The net result of that, ungats, nothing. Canvases upon canvases. It was over 1,800 DD5s in the case. And absolutely, I'd say 1,750 of those DD5s were completely useless. The DA's office actually thought we were lying to them when we told them we cannot print this stuff out. That's how bad it crashed the system at the time.
Yeah.
Now, as with a lot of cases, you know eventually you're going to get a break. When the break came, really what you needed to do was just leave the detectives alone. We had Billy's guys there from Manhattan North Homicide. We had my guys from the 19th Detective Squad, and two groups of people that are without a doubt, you know, and I really don't think I'm playing favorites here. These are some of the best detectives in New York City operating at that time. And when the break came, talk about the torture increasing. Do this, do that, you know. Leave these guys alone.
I remember that case, and one of the things how it got a little bit derailed was that some big boss thought it was the construction workers that were working on the floor above.
Correct.
So they forced the detectives to go in that direction. The detectives go, no, we don't think they did it. They're pretty much cleared. And the direction, well, you could tell who was the numero uno suspect.
Yeah. And you know, when the, you know, there in the beginning, there was a couple of schools of thought, and it went back to, as an old time detective used to say to me, he says, kid, usually the obvious is the most obvious. And it was the last person that saw this woman alive, who pummeled her. And once we focused on her, that's where the whole thing unraveled. She'd been stealing money, and the woman that was murdered was not really a pleasant woman either. She had a lot of...
She wasn't too pleasant.
Isn't that always the case?
I'll tell you what, there was a lot of people that came out of the woodwork that they disliked her. And
she knew a lot of people, though, that lady.
Oh, she knew everybody. She was a rock promoter back in the 70s.
Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah,
she did. But she, you know, at the end of the day, she's a victim, and she died an exceptionally brutal death. And
we never found the murder weapon. I remember it was
that went out the door. It
was a yoga stick, right? That was supposedly what it was.
Well, there was a yoga stick, and there was also a hand weight that we were wondering maybe, because we only found one hand weight in the apartment. And actually, a lot of research went into that. Are these things sold, you know, single, separately, you know, whatever.
Yep.
And when we got the video from the building, you could see she was carrying something heavy in her shoulder bag when she walked out the door. But that was a case where you talk about people calling up and bitching. We had lawyers dropping off papers at the station house telling us, do not go back to this building because of the canvases. The canvases were repeated, same apartments getting hit again and again.
Right.
People were actually like, stop it already, leave us alone, you know?
Pete, why don't we tell our audience who did it? Because they're dying right now to know we did it.
I'm not gonna, I don't want to,
you don't have to say the name, just tell her what relation she was to the lady who was killed.
I'm sorry, what was that?
No, you don't have to say her name, just say what relationship she was to the lady.
Oh, I thought you were talking about who was the guy that tortured us.
Who did it?
Oh, it was her assistant.
Her personal assistant, right?
Personal assistant.
I remember the DA, I think it was Jonah Luzzi. Her and her husband was also a DA. They watched the video hundreds, thousands of times, and they realized that the perpetrator had turned her pants inside out.
Yes.
But there was blood on the other side.
Yes.
So she turned them inside out so they wouldn't see the blood on the video. That's pretty.
Yeah, and you know what? Once we started looking into her financials, she had all of a sudden I got to give her credit where credit's due. She was making like large donations to the boys club. I think it was Norfolk, Virginia, or charitable organizations, but she ripped the lady off for 40 grand and basically got caught.
Right.
And she panicked, and you know, really smashing her skull in was a little bit extreme. It could have been.
She should have just quit.
Like everybody else does.
Yeah,
quit and leave.
You know, Pete, I mean, we sort of got a little bit derailed, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your police career, what year you came on, where you worked, and, you know, chronology of what you did.
I came on the job 1981. I went to NSU 4, which is the 19th, the 20, the 23. I was a young, eager crime fighter. Really, in 1982, I thought about going to TPF, but like somebody told me, it says, listen, you're going to go to the 20, all right? And I'm like, okay, I'll go to the 20.
TPF was
tactical patrol force.
What would become the task force?
Yeah, a little bit different than the task force. Basically, TPF would go into your neighborhood and just destroy whatever criminal element was in there. And
didn't you have to be over 6 feet?
They were loosening it up. I was
They
five.
must have given you some lifts in your shoes.
Yeah, before I'll tell you what. Before my time, it was 6 feet. You weren't getting in there otherwise.
Right.
I was in task force.
The task force was a little bit different setup.
It was watered down, but then Anamone took it over, and then we kind of sort of came back.
Yeah, there was some different variations of it that went on over the years. I didn't wind up in TPF. The day the orders came down, I was transferred to Central Park.
Whoa.
Like, oh my Lord, Central Park. And you know, in the weird things that, weird ways that things, you know, work out, I hooked up with a guy, a lot older than me, a lot of time on the job, who took me under his wing. He walked a steady footpost on 59th Street and really taught me a lot about how to be the police, how to go out there and, you know, don't react. He was the king. Never react with getting mad. Always react with getting even. And take no shit from nobody. And don't let anybody get over on you. And I worked with him for a year. I went into anti-crime.
You in Central Park anti-crime?
Central Park anti-crime. Central Park anti-crime. You know, you got to remember, you're talking Central Park in the 1980s.
Right.
They were banging out probably around 40, 50 robberies a year. I'm sorry, a month.
Right.
Back then. And it was, if they weren't doing robberies in the park, they were doing them in the 19th, and they would jump over the wall, and vice versa. You had a lot of drugs there back at that time, and I was with a good crew of people. In '85, I went to narcotics. 3 years there, same thing. Made some friends over there that to this day is still some of my closest friends. And you see my career progression here is then I left narcotics in the 7-7 squad in January of '88, the height of the crack wars. Young guy, I'll tell you what, you want to talk about an education into detective work. That precinct was a mile long, mile and a half wide, and 85 to 90 homicides a year. Nobody was looking at my case folder to see if I was up to date on my grand larcenies, because I never got a grand larceny the entire time I was in the 7-7. It was an old boss by the name of Freddie Hazel, who since passed away, called me into the office, and he said, young man, sit down. He says, let me see your case folder. Freddie was a dapper guy. He wore the best suits, always looking sharp, always spoke very quietly and almost like a college professor. He's looking at my case folder and he says, that's very nice what you got there. He says, are you familiar with the clearance rate? Which back at that time was around 35% of your case. If you hit 35%, that was good. He says, 35% is great. 40%, you're a superstar. 45%, you're a lying motherfucker. All right. He says, listen, he says, we don't want to look too good. We don't want to look too bad. He says, you see all that stuff that's in that case folder? That's typing practice. 90% of it is bullshit. He says, you see that wall? And he pointed to the wall. He says, each one of those brown folders has a body in it. He says, that's what you're here for. He says, and that's what we're going to take care of. And you know, kind of put you right at, you know, you knew where you're at. And 7-7 back at that time, you could hear the gunfire going off. You know, about the best you could do around the station house is close the windows if it bothered you, because there was that much gunfire in the streets. And that was a great education. You sat down and, you know, a lost art today is sitting down in the box with a perpetrator trying to get a confession. Back then, that was a daily occurrence. And these are some bad guys. And, you know, you learned very fast. My second night there, old timer says to me, he says, kid, get your coat. New shooter. I'm like, huh? He says, new shooter, you're up. And I remember the address. It was 99 Rogers Avenue. There's very few things I remember about my police career, but I remember 99 Rogers Avenue. And it was a dump job of a young kid. Dealing drugs. you had super predators in Brooklyn at that time. Guys were killing 8, 10, 12 people and wouldn't blink an eye. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see the rise of the super predator again here in New York City. That's where we're heading. But that was a great experience. And then
How long were you in the 7-7 for?
I was only there 2 years, 2 full years. I wound up going to Midtown North.
Oh man, someone dipped your balls in butter. How the hell did that happen? 7-7 to Midtown North?
It must have been recognition of the great work I was doing.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Help! Help!
It's called the hook. I wish I had the hook with me. That's what's called the hook.
You said you were going to help me.
Yeah, well, it's just the way things worked out. I don't know what to tell you.
One of my friends was on the desk there, and all these Chiefs kids work there. And it's like, my daughter Megan will be getting off this Saturday. And what's he gonna say? No, Chief, there's no excusals. There is for my daughter. Like those are the kinds of calls you get.
Yeah, well, you'll get an excuse. Let Sergeant to get transferred that night
To the 7-7.
to the 7-7.
You were brought in, so they had to transfer someone out.
Maybe that's what happened.
They launched some guy who wouldn't give Megan McCardle off or whatever her name was.
Right, you guys should have to stop for a beer, like 2 ships passing in the night. Have a beer and just go about your way.
That's right. He's going to Brooklyn. I'm going to Manhattan.
We should have to meet, have a beer, and then just keep going.
Give a little wave as you're passing by. I was there a couple of years. I was
You were in the North Squad
I was in the North Squad for close to 3 years.
as a detective or white sheet?
As a detective. I wound up in the 10th Squad for a year.
That's a good squad, right?
That was a great squad. That was absolutely.
All the clubs down there, right?
Yeah, back then it was pretty disgusting. You had the clubs, but you had a big tranny population down there.
Bill would have loved that.
Oh yeah, I would love trannies. Yeah. But you know what, Pete? The reason I asked you whether you were a Gold Shield because it wasn't uncommon back then for them to make investigators wait 6 to 7 years to get their shield, especially RIP guys.
Yeah. Oh, easy.
Yeah.
I wound up in Manhattan South Homicide before I was promoted sergeant. When we had the merge, we had a transit guy rolled in from Transit Major Case. Nice guy. And he says to me one day, "How long are you on the grid?" And I looked at him. I said, "The grid?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You're not on the grid?" I says, "But the only thing I get on around here is usually the shit list 2 or 3 times a week. But
Yeah.
grid?" He goes, "You don't have grade?" I said, "Don't have grade. I got a better chance of getting hit by lightning." I said, "There's 7 guys ahead of me." Okay. Some of them in rank 15, 16 years that were in homicide that did not have grade. I said,
Pete, it was similar. When I was in the 2-3 squad, I went there in 1997. When I tell you that was a superstar squad, they could have been the homicide squad. That squad was tremendous. Not a single guy in that squad had grade.
nope.
No.
No, yeah, you're 100% correct. But
Um,
until they had legislation, I believe it was 1998, mandating the numbers. That was it. I told the guy from Transit, I says, "Bro," I said, "I got like 12, 13 years on the job, all right?" I says, "I'm working with guys that have 40 years on the job." I says, "I kiss the ground every day just to be here working with them. I really do." I says, "I don't care if I ever get grade, I says, I'm just happy to be here." But that's the way it was. Then along about 98, they had legislation and it kind of opened up the gates a little bit.
It was 27 months initially that
Yes.
an investigator would be promoted to detective, and then it was knocked down to like 18 months, right?
Yeah, now they have the 18-month bill.
Yeah, so you have to, if you're an investigator for 18 months successfully, by law, you must be promoted to detective, right?
Yeah.
They should do that with grade. Like if you have what is it? The progress reports. What do they call the activity reports? The thing you got to sign.
Oh, evaluation. Yeah.
If you get 10 years of that, solid evaluations, then you should just get grade just because. Just that's it. I'm just saying, worst case scenario. If you didn't get it before, you should get it then.
Grade is something you could do a whole show just on grade and how it's assigned and how it gets passed around in the job. You have a lot of people that are not in the detective bureau that are in different, some of them in specialty units where in fact they do deserve grade because the type of special work that they do.
Yeah, like swabbing the chief's undercarriage. Is that what you're talking about?
That's in the book.
That special kind of work, the heated alcohol prep pad, they take care of the chief's undercarriage. Yeah, that's a lot of that special work.
That's the bucket squad.
Let me tell you something. The hardest working detectives on earth are the catching detectives in a detective squad, a numbered squad. And they deserve grade more than anybody.
And they don't get it.
Right, and they don't get it.
It's the sad fact. They don't get it. People, we often talk about, you watch all these TV shows, you wrap them up in 48 minutes plus commercials. People do not realize the day-to-day, the amount of work that detectives have placed on them. And then in the middle of it, you catch a homicide. And you try and, some people are better at it than others, but you get just completely just bowled over with the amount of work. You look at some of the stuff that went on, like I said, just in the 19th, you would have multiple incidents going on at the same time that required substantial resources in manpower, investigation, and nobody wanted to hear downtown like, yeah, I can't do it right now, or I'll get to it tomorrow. They don't want to hear it. And you could have a high profile homicide and then, I don't know.
The son of the CEO of Merrill Lynch is missing. He fits none of the criteria for a missing person, but you better put 2 detectives on that case.
You ain't kidding.
Right?
You ain't kidding it, because they don't want to hear no. They don't want to hear, I'll get to it.
Pete, you know what I loved? I used to love, while being a boss, it was a pain in the ass, but case management. And some detectives, who were good detectives, had horrendous case management. And I always remember this detective in the 2-3. He came in one day, he was like 45 minutes late. And he fully intended to come in, sign in, and go right down to the gym and pump out about 2 hours of weightlifting, right? He walks in, and he's 45 minutes late, and he sees inspections there. And I see he turns white, because he's 80 in the hole, with his cases. And I was like, I won't say his name, but I love this story. I was like, you better go hit that typewriter right now. And he's there at the typewriter. And I was howling laughing because, that's the...
I used to have a lot of cases. I was an 80, 90 guy, maybe 100.
You were the guy I loved. I'd say this week is Amnesty International week. Give me anything that's legit, and I'll sign off on it and I'll close it. You
know what I used to? Yeah, that used to happen once a year when you had to get your numbers down. That's when you just. But also too, if I put a case in, and you didn't sign off on it, and there was a whole bunch of yellow notes, and I knew that I did all the work on it, it should just be closed. That case was going to go to the bottom of my thing, and then when you go on vacation, I'm going to give it to the covering, the other boss, and he's just going to sign off on it. I'm going to take the stickers off, do another closing 5, give it back, and it's going to be signed. That's what I used to do all the time.
I would hang up a sign in the office and say, we're having a fire sale this week on case closings. 2 for the price of none. All right. Get it in. This is your amnesty. Sit down, start typing. All right.
I did a version of that too, but when I got a detective that didn't do the on say a DV case, didn't do the bare minimum, I would actually write on the DD5, do this, and this. And then I'd write, that's why they call it investigation. They would get fucking livid, pissed at me. But why do I have to tell you to do these things on a DV case?
There were certain guys, though, whose casework was impeccable.
Yes.
Absolutely phenomenal casework. You had some guys that couldn't spell, didn't know how to start a sentence with a capital letter and end it with a period, who were great detectives. And then you had guys that just probably shouldn't be allowed near a typewriter. And then you had guys whose stuff was always perfect.
Yeah.
That was the guy I would look for to put a yellow sticky on his case folder and then wait for the resultant explosion when he would come in my office.
I worked with the guy, and he used to have maybe 7, 8 cases open. As soon as he got a case, he was closing it out one by one. Like it was, he would, you know how you can look to open, look for the somebody, or you can just look, how am I going to close this out? By the 3rd day, the case was closed. He was giving it back. That's the way it used to go. He was just closing it out.
But you see, here's where we went off the rails, okay? Chief Resnick put out a checklist. The Resnick checklist was meant for big cases, homicide, shootings, the heavies. And then it morphed. It morphed into the checklist for everything.
Right.
Then the checklist got bigger and bigger, and to the point where no matter how much typing, you could sit there, I mean, on a bullshit case, and you could sit there and do 10 or 15 DD5s. When I was in the 7-7, there was like, you did maybe 2 or 3 DD5s. And that was even on sometimes with shootings. This is what it is. There was no checklist.
Right.
This is what we got. Can we take it further? Yeah, we'll go for it. If we can't.
For our non-police personnel, every time a detective talks to somebody on the phone, does any kind of investigative thing, he has to memorialize it on what's called a complaint follow-up. And jargon, Pete said it is called a DD5. Just so our fans from all over the world know this.
Listen to this. When they were stealing the cell phones like crazy, we had to, get in touch with the carrier and get the phone call list of all the calls that were made after the phone was stolen. And then we had to go and visit all those locations and knock on those doors and ask them, did you receive a phone call from so-and-so? And sometimes it was just such a waste of freaking time. And to close the case out, you had to put the yellow that you got that number and what was the result on a 5. Every number that was called, it was just
that goes back to a certain person, shall remain nameless, whose insanity, and I'm not, you know what? He did sometimes have good ideas and dragged us kicking and screaming into the computer age. But we went off the rails with the telephones, all right? 98% of the people, when they lost their phone, they would make a complaint or whatever, they don't want to hear from you again. They don't care what you do with the phone. They don't want this followed. Just, I got my complaint number, it's done. But that would still involve 10 or 15 follow-up reports on that case.
Right.
An absolute waste of time. Subpoenas. We crushed the phone company with subpoenas on useless bullshit that nobody is ever going to look at again. Are there cases where you do phone subpoenas? Without a doubt. On a case where somebody's going to hey, I lost my phone. I got drunk. I lost my phone. All right? Forget it. Close it out. Move on. Waste of time.
When you did Night Watch, did you do midnights before that? Or were you used to it, your body?
I got promoted sergeant in 95.
I knew we'd get there soon to sergeant. We're still back in somewhere in the 80s, right?
I went to the 19th, and I tried getting back to the detective bureau and got caught up in the draft. And I wound up on the dark side. And
You were in IAB? I never knew you were in IAB.
Oh, yeah.
What's your favorite cheese?
Is
Is it Gouda, Swiss, mozzarella? What do you like the best?
from under. What happened? And I'll tell you what nasty, under Campisi, who was an evil person.
I noticed you named his name.
I'm going to tell you something. I thought I was going to Vice, and I went before the board. The Vice contract didn't work out. I thought I'd make it to the bureau. So I said, I'm going to yank my papers. So
When you want to go to the equipment bureau?
Yes.
And
Yes, the equipment bureau.
you can handle the radio holders?
That would have, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I would have done that. And I wound up, I says, I'm going to yank my papers. And there's a lieutenant down there. You call him up and he says, oh, you do realize you're going to be blacklisted. You never go into a plainclothes. I says, I'm the 4 to 12 condition sergeant in the 19th precinct. I I'm loving life. So, you know, if this is what's going to happen to me, I just as soon stay here. The next night at 9:30 at night, I was transferred on a telephone message. I went absolutely, completely stalk raving mad. I'm actually surprised the issue didn't come in and tase me. I was that pissed. I had to be down there the next morning. And what's funny was it was a detective, Manhattan detective boss, big boss, that was there at the time. He called me up. He says, listen, don't wreck your life over this. He says, let me put you in a group. You'll do traffic agents. You're working with a good boss. It's okay, sure. I go down there the next day, and I'm transferred to Canarsie.
Oh, shit.
So, yeah, doing like real IAB stuff. And, you know, I had to go to Left Rack City, had to pee in the bottle. I go home. So I go in Monday. I'm not waking my ass up to go out there and be there at 8 o'clock in the morning in Canarsie. So I come in, the CO's waiting for me, and he goes, where were you? I said, I was sleeping. He goes, really? He says, you're lucky I don't find you AWOL. I says, well, so I'm going to tell you something. I'm kind of depressed. And with that, you can see the look of sheer terror come across this guy's face like, ah.
He thought he was going to have to EDP you.
I says, I'll tell you what. I says, I'm pretty upset over this. I was told I was going somewhere else. And I'm sitting here in fucking Canarsie. I live in Midtown. I says, I'm never coming here again. I says, give me a 28, which is a slip for lost time. And I says, tomorrow, I says, I'm going down to headquarters and I'm going to vest off the job. I says, this sucks. This place sucks. And basically you suck. And, he was a nasty son of a bitch, that guy. My buddy called me up laughing. And he said, back then we had beepers. My beeper goes off. He goes, what did you just do to him? I says, I told him the truth. And he says, oh my God, you got them all in a panic.
Was he a career cheese captain or what?
The guy in Canarsie was a lifer.
Yeah, they're fucking, those old IAB lifers, they were, oh my God. They were out of control.
What happened was, like 2-3 days later, I was transferred to Group 56 in Queens, which is the traffic agents. And I'm going to tell you, the commanding officer over there, if he called me up tomorrow and asked me to invade hell, I would follow him. He was that good of a man. There were 4 or 5 other sergeants. We all got pulled in there in the same day. Without a doubt, 5 of the most miserable people you've ever met in your life. But I'll tell you what, some of those people today are still some of my closest friends. I had a bad family tragedy while I was there. My brother passed away suddenly. And I'm going to tell you something. You know, sometimes that's the bigger plan. The bigger plan is that put you in a place where you're going to meet the right people to help you get through those things in life. And I got through it, you know. And after when my time came, they said, where are you going? I said, A3, 19th Precinct. I went back to Lake Tours in the 19th. I did not go to the Detective Bureau. And I was back in the bag.
What year was this?
98.
Wow.
I was back in the bag for 5 years, some of it in anti-crime. And 2003, I finally went up to the squad. It was 7 years in the 19th squad.
Holy
and
shit.
10 years in night watch.
Wow. You paid your dues, man.
Yeah, you know, Billy, I got no complaints. I loved every minute of it.
I skated out of the IAB shit because I was in RIP, and they just rolled RIP right into the squad. Or right, you know, RIP used to be part of patrol, even though you worked up in the squad. And then they just rolled the RIP sergeants right into the detective bureau, so I didn't have to go to the cheese unit.
Yeah, I got the intel on how I wound up there when I went before the board, everybody says, nah, send this guy to the bureau. That's where he belongs. That's where he came from. So I spent almost 8 years in the detective bureau as a detective. Campisi looks at my folder and says, this guy worked in Manhattan South Homicide as a detective. He's coming here. And that was the end of it. And you're basically punished for good work that you did. And, you know, I'll put a little plug in here. You know, when we rolled the traffic agents in, when we took them over in the NYPD, I don't think there was anybody who hated traffic agents more than me, especially living in Manhattan. After the merge,
I know you took a pool plate home. I know it. There's no way you lived in Manhattan, didn't have a pool plate.
no comment. I wish I still had that pool plate. I'll tell you what, within about a year, you know, the traffic agents, we really, the NYPD put some good management in there, and I got to know some of the managers in the place. They couldn't be any happier than to be under the wing of the NYPD, because there was some of the agents, the tow truck drivers, I think using the word unruly at best would be kind, and cracked the whip, and they actually turned it to a, you know, fairly well-run outfit, which is now immediately going to go out the window because de Blasio, in his infinite wisdom, decides that we're going to take them away from the police department. Most of these people do not want to leave the police department.
That's just a numbers game, because they're
Sure it is, without a doubt.
So they take this big section of the police and they take it out of the police department's budget.
Well, they took them and they took the school safety agents. School safety was a cesspool prior to us taking it over.
Right.
And
a cesspool again.
Both these agents, in time, it's going to slide back, and we'll be right back to where we were 25 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's public relations. Oh yeah, it sounds good with defunding the police, but who's going to get screwed in the end? Especially when you think about it. You got kids in the, you know, who's in these schools? It's kids. They're there to protect those kids.
Right.
Do you want the same creeps back in there that were there 15, 20, 25 years ago? Of course not. You know, short-sighted. But then again, I'm not the police commissioner. What can I tell you?
Yeah, well, it's tough times for the NYPD, you know.
It's absolutely horrible times.
So, you know, we did almost 35 years of your career, so we got another 4 left. Tell us what it was like in the last couple of years being on the NYPD.
I'm sorry, the last
couple of years.
Last couple of years were great. You know, I was in Night Watch, and I had a lot of people that were there. You know, when I worked in Night Watch, when I worked as a detective in Brooklyn, because Night Watch has gone through different variations over the years. Some years it would be a dumping ground. They would put their problem children in there. When I took it over, just speaking for my little end in Manhattan South, I told the guys that came there with me, they were like, listen, we're going to run this the same way we run a squad, in that treat the cases like it's your case, like you would want it handed off to you. I said, this guys in the squad are getting crushed. I says, do good work. I says, I'm telling you right now, if we turn in good work in the morning and help these guys out, they appreciate it, the bosses appreciate it, and everybody else will pretty much just leave us alone as long as you're doing a good job.
All right.
And that's pretty much, that was my mantra for 10 years there.
I was a squad guy, and I have to tell you that, you know, when I caught a case, the fives were always there on my desk from Night Watch. I hated doing Night Watch, by the way. I just that whole thing just screws you up, man.
It's not for everybody. It really isn't.
Well, because, you know, when it came to the turnaround, I'd rather go out and do. I'd rather go out and go out to a bar, and now all of a sudden I'm stuck doing fucking Night Watch. I'm like, what? We were gonna go out. I can't now.
Yeah, it's the morning.
Yeah, you know, but that's one of the reasons why they started Manhattan South Night Watch, was to get away from pulling people from the squads a couple of times a week in the South. It was brutal, because every week, every two, you had to fill, those slots had to be filled. And,
yeah, like once every 3 months.
Yeah, but when it still sucked. Whoever was going to get it, it's still really, just in the middle of your week, it's horrible. I'm a night owl. I was born late at night, and I've been up late ever since. So they always agree with me.
I was born at night, but not last night. Right?
Not born at last
You hear
night.
that one?
You you reached a point when I had night watch, you figured out, okay, it's like 4:00. We're not going to hear from them now. So
Yeah, that's the kiss of death.
Right, right, right.
you know, because at that point you guys want the overtime. So most of the time,
True.
Right, it's like 10-1 on a turnaround, and you can already taste the first beer at Coogan's. Someone just got shot in the leg. You're like, oh no,
Yeah.
right?
12:45.
I used to laugh. I says, listen, if you think you're going to escape here alive tonight, it's not happening. Because just when you think it's time to go home, you know, it's like 7:15 or whatever. And somebody will get shot in Midtown Manhattan. You know, 7:30 in the morning, some guy decides to kill himself in front of Fox News. Or a few years ago, and it was a tragic case. We had a limo driver shot himself in the head with a shotgun in front of City Hall. And it was tragic because I actually took the time to read the guy's manifesto, you know, as to why he did it. But at the same, here it is, 7 o'clock in the morning, and then bang, your phone is exploding, the office phone's exploding, emails. It's just, you can never just say, I'm gonna go home and go to bed today. Not happening.
Pete, you know something? One of our fans on Facebook Live just asked if you would be willing to talk about your 9/11 experience.
Hey, before we do that, can we just Shane Rogers says hello.
Oh, hello, Shane.
All right, so back to Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
You go, no, well, we all three of us are 9/11 responders, but you had a very different experience than Mark and I. Maybe.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing about 9/11, the night before, it was I worked late too. It was a beautiful night. And I had to be in court that morning on a case. The DA that had the case actually called me. One very considerate person called me up and says, listen, I'm going to be busy. Why don't you come down here at 11? So when the planes hit, I was still in the 19th precinct and then sitting on the couch up in the sergeant's locker room, falling asleep. Cop comes in and says, plane just hit the Trade Center. So I'm looking I put New York 1 on and I'm watching it. And bang, here comes the second plane. And he says, that's got to be a replay. I said, that's not a replay. I said, the building's already burning and it just got hit again. So we went down. The van left without me and the lieutenant. And you talk about the weird coincidences in life. I ran out in the street. I grabbed an RMP with the lieutenant. 3 firemen from the firehouse next door asked if they could join us. Dump all the shit out of the car.
Oh, you're a fireman. No way you're riding in a police car.
Well, this one guy, a firefighter, a fire lieutenant by the name of Murphy, and Ray Murphy. And there's actually a very famous photo of him walking into the North Tower after the first collapse. And he died that day. And, you know, those 3 guys hopped in my car. One of the things I will never forget, going down the West Side Highway and some lunatic on a motorcycle with a leather helmet and goggles. I'm doing about 70 miles an hour in the RMP. This guy passed me on a motorcycle with a fireman on back who had his full turn, everything, the tank, an axe, hanging onto his helmet. And this guy fucking passed me.
Wow.
And I remember Murphy and the guys in the back, they were cheering, you know, and I looked and they were all laughing, you know. And we got down there, and like a cop with time on the job, I said, all these fire trucks, if I leave the car here, I'll never get the car out of here because of the hoses. I dropped those guys off in front of the hotel on West Street. I went over to Battery Park City, put the RMP in there. We walked up Vesey Street, and as we're walking up, I realized I was by myself, and I turned around, and the lieutenant was with 2 old men. And I'm yelling, you know, Lou, we got to go. And with that, I heard this strange noise. And I looked up, and the top the South Tower was coming apart. I says, holy shit. Took off running, ran into 7 World Trade. The doors were locked. I actually had my gun out, and somebody pushed the door open from the inside. And we ran in. I grabbed these 2 old men, dragged them in back of the escalator that was there. And I mean, that whole lobby, it just seemed like the whole lobby came in on top of us. I made my peace with God at that moment. I says, you know what? I had a pretty good run. Take care of my parents, take care of my family, you know, because I'm not getting out of here. And the lieutenant and I got separated. And after about a minute or so, he says, well, you're not dead. Make yourself useful. I get up, pulled 2 old timers up. They were both priests. And I says, man, it's just, I think I had an ace in my pocket here today. And, you know, they went about their way. I was walking around the lobby there, and you can't see anything. All the alarms going off. And I walked up the escalator, and some guy says to me, he goes, thank God the police are here. And he hands me his flashlight and runs. I'm like, I'm looking around. I'm it. There's nobody there. And I'm just yelling because I could hear people coming down the stairs. At some point, I walked out the back of the building and fell right on my face off the loading dock. And there was a retired New York City detective there, a guy by the name of Pete Conroy. He just passed away last summer. Pete Conroy was the director of security for 7 World Trade. He was having trouble getting people to help him. He had 2 guys up on the roof of 7. And, you know, I says, come on, I'll go with you. And I will say, Pete Conroy, one of the bravest people I ever met. We went up the stairs. Yeah, with me. I made it about 15 flights. And on the way through, we loaded up. I had cargo pants. I loaded up my pockets with bottles of water from the cafeteria. I made it about 15 flights, puking my guts out, not really being able to breathe because I ingested so much crap the first time. And he says, Peter says, I think I'm done. And he says, I got to keep going. And I says, I'll go to the street. I says, I'll see if I can find the SU. I says, you know, he says, just stay in this stairwell. I made it to the street, and he kept going. I made it to the street. I step out onto Vesey Street. I had no idea what had happened. I didn't know that the whole building came down. And mass confusion on the street. Everything's on fire. There was a gas main rupture. There was cars blowing up. People are constantly ducking because tires are popping, gas tanks are exploding. And I'm standing there, and I'm there maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and somebody yelled, "Tower's leaning." And I looked up, and all of a sudden you heard that I wouldn't call it a roar. It was like a, and you know, I'm standing on Bessie and West. You really just really in a bad spot. And I took off running. We all ran as the tower started coming down. I made it to like the first fire truck on West Street. I got in there, and actually funny, a guy I hadn't seen in years was behind the truck. And he goes, "Hey, Pete." I look at him. I says, "Holy shit, Jimmy." It just hang on. And it came down, and to the point where I thought we were under the actually under the building. It was that quiet. The air was that dense with smoke. There was somebody screaming under the fire truck. And I crawled under the truck. I said, "Bro, you got to stop screaming. Please." I says, "You're here with the police and there's firemen here." I says, "Stop screaming." I says, "We're going to be okay. We're going to get out. Just hang on to me and we'll get out of here." Meanwhile, I'm thinking, we're fucked. There's nobody coming to get us. And you go into sensory overload. You sight, all your senses are just getting whacked at once with just too much to process. Not realizing if I could move around, I'm not under the building. It was the air was just that pitch black. And after a couple of minutes, we made it out. We got all the people out from under the trucks and stuff, and just said, there's the light. Start walking, and we did. And that guy Pete Conroy made it a couple of more floors. When the tower came down, the second tower, it hit 7 World Trade so hard that the building actually bent, and he got trapped in the stairwell. He could only make it back down to the 8th floor. It was weird. He broke out a window and got FD's attention, and a couple of firemen came up. By the time they got to him, one of the floors below them was already fully engulfed, and they literally had to fight their way in to get him and fight their way back out again. And you wonder why you're here, and I can only attribute to the fact that the guy upstairs is not today. He had a plan. There was a tremendous amount of death that day, and destruction and lives destroyed, but the good thing that you take for it, there was also a lot of miracles that day, and a lot of people did make it out. It sucks. Here we are 19 years later, and people are sick and dying. But it was funny because, I retired from the job earlier that summer and came back. And
I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah, I retired. I came back. I was in a wicked RMP accident maybe 2 weeks back. I was out for a couple of weeks, came back, and
you were in the RMP accident after 9/11.
Before 9/11.
Oh.
And
so you came back, and then
came back and actually had some lunatic. It was myself and another cop from the 19th precinct one night. Had a guy that wanted to go suicide by cop on 85th Street. And thankfully we didn't, he had an imitation 38 in his pocket. He held up Burger King. We got the manager in the car, and this guy doubles back and runs right at us screaming, "Kill me." And, it's funny, in this day and age, there was not much video back then, and there was a cop driving by that jumped into the middle of that fray. And if people would see that video today, they'd be like, "Oh my God, what they did to that man. He was horrible." Well, I could have went with plan B and just shot him in the head and killed him.
Right.
Because he had his hand in his pocket on this gun, trying to pull it out. There's two sides to every story. And then 3 days after that, I'm under the Trade Center. I don't regret it. I have absolutely no regrets. This is my life. This is what I was meant to do. It's what I wanted to be when I was a kid.
Something, just to stop you for a second. Your World Trade Center story could be a movie in itself. Tremendous.
Yeah, definitely.
I take my hat off to you. That was, look, I think we all have a touch of PTSD from doing what we did, over the years, all the misery we saw, all the violence we saw. And, even just that story alone, I could see how emotional it makes you to tell that story. And it's an amazing thing. And here we are 19 years later, and people hate the police,
Without a doubt.
Never forget it, right?
Here we are in the age of ACAB. All cops are bastards.
Yeah.
And you know what? You look at the people that are out there yelling and carrying on. You know what? When it comes to protest, I don't think there's a better agency in the world than the Nypd for handling protest. You've done it. I've done it. Mark, you've done it. We'll stand out there for 10 hours and listen to your bullshit and not even raise an eyebrow. And just say, all right, yeah, whatever. All right, and go on your merry way. Until it gets violent and we tell you, okay, now you got to say it walking. Okay, and when it comes to end those kind of protests, we're good at it. We're very good. But we're in a situation now with we could have stopped that back in June. We could have stopped that the first night. If the political leadership just said end this tonight, it would have ended. And bring all our resources to bear. Not put cops out there as punching bags to stand there and listen to this bullshit. But most of these people are out there now. They have no idea about it. They were young, or they weren't even born when 9/11 happened.
Right.
The same thing with a lot of the hipsters and the transplants and, you know, the people that live here now. They weren't here when New York City was a shithole.
Well, Pete, you know, that's an amazing thing because you're right. The millennial generation, they feel fine about taking the train to Flatbush at 2 o'clock in the morning because they used to be able to do that. Guess what? You're not going to be able to do that anymore.
No, but back in the 1990s, you weren't taking the train to Flatbush.
No, that's what I'm saying. But in this day and age, they were able to do that. But it's going to go back. It's going to go back to what New York City used to be. The shithole, the crime, you know, everywhere you go, you potentially could get robbed, or someone stick a gun in your face, a knife, give me your money. You know,
Billy,
they never experienced that.
you know, last year we were working on a case up at 146 in Amsterdam. Guy walking his dog. Cab driver on the corner hears a pop, and the guy falls down. And it was a horrible video. This guy's little dog jumping on him, like thinking he's playing at first, and all of a sudden realizes there's something wrong here. And I'm standing out there. I'm out there all night doing our thing. Some crackhead comes walking by. He goes, "Yo, man, you looking for shell casings?" And I says, "Yes, I am." He goes, "Follow me, but don't follow too close." Get a drink. Sorry. We walk halfway down 146th Street. He points to the ground and keeps walking. I said, "Son of a bitch." There's a live round and a shell casing for a 30 caliber round, which is rare. It's an M1 carbine. It's really the only round that will fit in that rifle is the 30 cal. And I'm looking at it. Crime scene comes over and says, "Yeah, it's a 30 cal." I says, "Somebody was standing out here with a rifle and shot this poor bastard." And sure enough, we find video, and these two little pricks come walking down the street. They're standing there. They're going to shoot some other guy that's walking past them. Almost point blank range. This guy takes out a M1 carbine, military rifle, brings it up, pow. He winds up shooting this poor bastard a half block away. We didn't see that crap. We haven't seen that in decades. And here's this poor guy, and everybody in the neighborhood knew this guy and loved him because they see him every night walking his little dog. You know, everybody knew him, and you know. And I says, "This is going to get bad. You know, when you have regular, you know, civilians, just people just minding their business, taking a rifle round in the ass and it kills them.
Right.
Bad." And you know what? Now, this June, you know, we had all this anti-cop shit going on. And they disbanded anti-crime. You know, we had three or 4 months of dealing with COVID, then the riots. Then we segue into this explosion of shooting. And 5th of July was my first one back. And I called the night watch sergeant Manhattan North, and I'm laughing. I says, "Do you need help?" And he goes, "I don't know if I got 11 people shot in one incident, or I got 11 people shot in 3 separate incidents in the 3-2, 3 blocks apart, pretty much within 2 minutes. And it was 3 separate incidents." He says, "But I got 3 people shot in the 2-3. Can you go help out?" We go help, go over there. While I'm there, one of the cops is, "Hey," he says, "you got a couple of people shot in the 3-4. I go up to the 3-4. We got 5 more people shot in the 3-4. And Nagel Avenue looked like Fallujah that morning. It was wrecked. I couldn't believe it. And 22 people in 7 hours in Manhattan North alone that night.
That's unbelievable. We haven't seen that since the 80s, the late 80s.
I think that might even be a record for the 80s. 22 is, I said, "You got to be kidding me." And, you know, is it the cops' fault? No. The cops are handcuffed. They cannot do their job. And until the laws are changed, this is the way it's going to stay. We got this Bolshevik clown grifter as the mayor, not listening. You got a city council that's going over the edge with them. And
well, Pete, you know what? Let's segue to the diaphragm law, because I know that you spoke to some people on the city council and you let them know your disapproval of them and this stupid law. You want to just talk a little bit about that?
My first day as a retired person, I wake up and I says, you know what? Today's the first day of me being a social justice warrior for cops. I knew this guy was having a rally out in Brooklyn. And I waited until his rally was over. It was for essential workers. And I didn't act like a dick. I waited. And I've been known to give people a hard time on Twitter. In particular, this guy. And I went up to him and I says, Councilman, I says, I'm Pete the cop. Now, if the roles were reversed, I would have thrown me. We were on a pier at 69, I think the 69th. It's a pier overlooking New York Harbor. I would have thrown me into the harbor. That's how bad I broke this guy's balls on a regular basis. He was a gentleman, and he said, he started laughing, and he says, don't go anywhere. He said, I want to talk to you. Let me say goodbye to these people. And I'll tell you what, he spent an hour. There was another retired member of the service that came out there with me. And you know what? He actually listened, and he actually enlightened me to a lot of what is going on in the council. I'm not going to out the guy publicly. There was another member of the city council there, and I'll be quite honest with you. I'm sorry I didn't throw him into the harbor, because this is a guy that's pretty much one of, somebody you cannot, he's not listening. He's not going to entertain any other point of view other than his quote unquote, as I call it, the world view. And he wouldn't shut up. So finally, I just said to him, I said, Councilman, listen, I said, this is all great. Kumbaya, peace and love, you name it, visualize world peace, whatever it is. I said, but you're full of shit. And he looked at me, he jumped back, he goes, I said, this is all bullshit. I says, tonight in the 73rd precinct, some young kid's gonna get shot. I said, tonight in the 3-2 precinct, 1 or 2 young kids are gonna get shot. I says, down in Red Hook, some old man will be sitting in front of the Red Hook houses and is gonna take one right in his ass because these morons are all carrying guns. And I says, you caused it. You and your policies have caused this. I says, I don't give a shit about your linkage to, this guy just threw the whole thing at me. The only thing he might not have thrown in is climate change. We got inequality, we got Black Lives Matter, you name it. This guy hurled it at me. It was one big all-encompassing situation, to which that's when I told him it's bullshit. I says, I'm talking about New York City right here, right now. This is live on the ground. People getting killed. I says, mostly young people of color. I says, you don't want to hear it. I says, 3 nights ago, okay? I says, one of my last jobs, I was handling one thing up in the hospital, and I walk in, and there's this woman going berserk. Her 18-year-old son's laying dead on a gurney. I says, so I don't want to hear your bullshit about, well, at which point he finally said, I have another appointment, I have to leave.
Pete, they're such cowards, these city council people. I mean, the whole thing of like the diaphragm law, that cops not being able to put their knee in someone's back to get them handcuffed. How about these jailhouse jacks that get out there jacked up coming out of prison? You need every man on deck to get one of those guys cuffed. These city councils should go to a gym and they should have to try to cuff people.
They should go through, take a train, go through one of the courses in the police academy on handcuffing. All right, tough guy, go speed cuff this cop over here. Some big jack.
They don't ask anyone with knowledge of police work for their advice. Their arrogance is such that they just make this decision, and they got a clown of a mayor. And we got to include Cuomo in this too, because he recently, he took the side of the protesters against the police. He's spouting out some left-wing rhetoric now. He's a joke too.
Well, he came out, I think it was about 2-3 days ago, just ranting and raving about the cops, how he's going to cut off funding if the cops don't start doing the job.
Yeah.
He's such a bullshit artist. I said, because this is a guy that signed the bill, the criminal justice bill, and said, oh, well, I didn't read what was in it. Well, you know what?
He's a clown.
If you didn't read what's in it, you shouldn't be governor. That's like
impeached.
Gubernatorial malpractice, something that's going to affect millions of New Yorkers, and you don't read the bill. You know what? Hit the road, Jack, because what he did now, he's attacking the cops again. And I'm like, hey, jackass, you signed this bill.
Yeah.
All right. This man will accept, he's like de Blasio in that sense. He will accept no blame for his behavior.
Yes.
Yeah. Here it is now. We have this diaphragm section, and all of this is it needs to be done. There's a couple of needs of tweaking. They can carry on. They can fight about all the other bullshit that's in that bill from now to doomsday. I really don't care. But the fact is that cops' lives are in danger. Civilians' lives are in danger because the cops cannot do their job.
It's going to be reversed because it flies right in the face of Article 35 of the penal law. But
yeah, but you know why? But why should the unions and everybody have to file a lawsuit and go through all these legal hurdles? Because in the interim, people are getting shot. You know, no matter how you cut it, people are still getting shot and dying.
Joe Murray, who's an attorney, is listening right now, and he said the diaphragm law actually incentivizes violence against the police.
100% correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, the Brooklyn North, oh, Jesus, I forgot his name. The guy who was the CO of Brooklyn North and Patrol.
Now he's the community affairs guy?
Yes. He comes out and says if somebody's going to resist, let him go and make a memo book entry.
Oh, God. That's unbelievable.
What are we doing here? You know?
Right.
But in that respect that the cops are not going to get in trouble, yeah, then that's a smart move. Would I want to be in that position? Absolutely not. That's why I'm retired now. And
well, you had mentioned before also, and we don't need to mention any names, but something that really upset you was these big bosses kneeling and kneeling down. That upset you, and that may be one of the reasons you retired.
Well, was it a main reason? No. Was I shocked when I saw it? Absolutely. We're taught, all of us here, that all of these pictures here on the screen, we were taught from day number one, you don't take sides. I don't know what he thought he was trying to achieve, okay, by kneeling in front of the howling mass. I'm not kneeling. I'm not taking a knee. And it's as simple as that. You can sit there and yell at me all day. I don't care. But you know what? I'll let you do your protest, whatever it is. But you think you're going to get in my face and tell me to take a knee? You can go fucking pound sand. Not happening. I don't know what that was, the desired effect was of that. Because these clowns weren't going to cut him any slack.
Yes, but Pete, there's like a kneeling society now. There's a bunch of them. They probably have rackets together. The kneelers are going to have a racket up in the Bronx tonight.
Yeah, well, you know what, Bill? One thing I can tell you before I did leave, with a vast majority of the police, they're not kneeling.
No.
They're not taking a knee. And I don't know what certain people above us are thinking, but the people standing in back of you, they're not kneeling. And they viewed that as a truly knife in the back moment. And I don't know what was to be gained from that, but
you know, Pete, it's almost like with the leadership, it's almost like Stockholm Syndrome. Like they're identifying with this horrendous leader named de Blasio, and they start thinking like it. I call it Stockholm Syndrome. You start identifying with your captor, you know?
I don't know if you can be that whacked in your head to truly think like de Blasio, because that man's operating on some sort of different wavelength. But, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know. I'm not in that position. I can only speak for myself as a sergeant. We were out. They tried taking the block one night. We all go running out there, and it was some of the most vile, nasty invective I've ever heard. And mostly directed at Black and Hispanic police officers, in particular, female Black and Hispanic police officers. And some of them were white people, some of them were Black that were hurling this. And one, you know, and I'm like, you know what? 15, 20 years ago, it would have been, all right, say your piece. All right, you may go now, okay? Because we're about reaching point of our limit where you've gone way past peaceable assembly into acting like a complete disorderly asshole. And I felt terrible for those officers because I could see they probably would have liked to have leaned over the barrier and cracked somebody. But you know what? We were professional. We stood there. There was an older black guy that was with these kids. And they're not kids. They're in their teens, 20s, or whatever. He came back and he apologized to us. And he said, that was bad. And I said, yeah, it was bad. I said, you know what? We're going way past bad into fucking hatred. I said, that's what that was. And I said, you know what? They weren't yelling at me like that. They're yelling at the black and Hispanic cops. I mean, really now? You know, and he says, I know, but he says, I'm glad you guys didn't react. And I'm like, that's all well and good. He says, I'm trying to shepherd these kids. I says, well, you should really give them some guidance that you know what? We have a thing called impulse control. Maybe they should use it, okay? Because at the end of the day, I'm not, you know, there's going to be a limit to what I'll put up with or I'll let another officer be subjected to. They were smart enough to know that if they raised their hands or threw something or spit on the officers, they were probably going to get cracked. And but the hatred, and I'm like, this is sick.
Well, Pete, you know what really makes it breaks my heart is like one of the videos I saw was when that lieutenant got hit in the head with the brick. And one of his cops pulled his gun, which is, that's
100%.
And de Blasio wanted him fired. I wanted to go to Gracie Mansion and slap the shit out of de Blasio, you know?
Well, yeah, but you know what? There were multiple instances of like that where people were, you know, cops got a little physical with somebody and everybody's bitching and crying. Oh, this cop shoved me. Shoved you? You know what we would have done to you? Years back, you spit in my face or hit me with a skateboard. Forget it.
And then Cuomo has his attorney general, Letitia James, write up a 57-page report on the NYPD's conduct during these riots, of which he sided with the rioters. He calls them protesters, but he does a 57-page hit job on the NYPD. This is the clown that's the governor.
Yeah, she might want to do a 57-page report on his handling of the COVID issue in the nursing homes.
Yes, I think that's where it needs an independent investigation. But he likes to appoint the investigators that investigate him.
You know,
or commission. You know,
if Letitia James has so much time on her hands to carry on about bullshit, how about she look into Thrive NYC? Okay,
yeah.
The mayor's wife misplaces $900 million. Okay. And I always say this, I says, like guys in the mafia stand in awe saying, oh man, that's outstanding. Where did that money go? There's not one, nobody's come out. There hasn't been a public accounting by Scott Stringer. None of these people. And you know what? It's not going to get done by DOI because that's another bucket in there from
an arm of the mayor.
Yeah, a bucket. And you have him, Cy Vance.
He's a clown too.
I don't know what he's doing because they're certainly not prosecuting a whole lot of people. And you go right up the line. Letitia James isn't going to touch it because if you truly get into Thrive NYC, what you're going to see is a whole lot of nonprofits and a whole lot of nonprofits with bad accounting. And you take a look at who owns those nonprofits. And, you know, it's friends of the mayor, associates, whatever. There was a couple of reports that came out today with one of the nonprofits they were looking into. And I'm like, at what point does sanity return to government and say, maybe we should take a look into this? Well, right? If Letitia James wants to investigate anything, let her investigate that.
No, she wouldn't be able to find the bad guy in Rikers Island. Why would you have her investigate anything?
There's nobody left in Rikers Island.
That's true. They're all out on the street.
They're all out the street.
Yeah.
Pete, let me ask you, what do you think it's going to take in regards to how, you know, with 39 years on, how many shootings is it going to take? How many weekends in a row before it breaks, before they decide to do something? If you had to make a prediction.
We call it the Brian Watkins moment, which is what got.
I was in Midtown North when that happened.
Yeah.
And you know what, though? Brian Watkins happened, and it still went on for another 2.5 years. He got stabbed in 91, and nothing changed until Giuliani came in 94. There'll be a number of really horrific homicides, and people are going to go, "Ooh, that's horrible." With this clown running city government right now, we have another 14 months of this guy. He's not hearing a word we're saying. The city council, there are people in the city council, like I said, that realize that they're posturing publicly on one hand, with ACAB and defund the police and all this other nonsense. Privately in the back rooms, they're like, how do we get out of this position? Because you're 100%, they never spoke to any cops, anybody in policing. They didn't speak to any attorneys, the district attorneys. They realize they have a terrible problem on their hands. A good start will be changing the diaphragm law to get the cops back in the game. However, the overall picture, nothing's changing until this jackass is out of City Hall.
Yeah, but Pete, the scary thing is that there are 3 candidates in line that are just as bad as him, that are probably going to be the next mayor. Eric Adams, Corey Johnson, or Scott Stringer. How are they different than de Blasio?
They're all 3 of them are hopefuls.
Yeah.
Eric Adams, all right, is a guy that should know better. He was a cop 30 years, but he comes out with his, hey, tell your neighbors to knock it off with the fireworks. And that woman was shot dead in Brooklyn.
That's what he did as a cop. He did nothing.
That's all he did as a cop. He threw fire bombs. Yeah. He was the police department version of a poverty pimp. For 30 years, we listened to this guy throw fire bombs. A lot of it very unfair. And nobody would go against him. Nobody would take him on because they were scared to. And he's a buffoon. And,
Shabool.
Hey, can you explain?
Sometimes I speak Italian when I get mad.
Hey, can you explain to our audience what a hoople is?
They may not know in the Midwest.
Well, that's
Australia what a hoople is.
Actually, the word hoople comes from, I think, Dr. Seuss way back when. Just growing up in Queens, though, that was it. As a kid, my brother would say, "That guy's a fucking hoople." And hoople is like a general purpose kind of word for an ass clown. All right.
I love that. That's a great cop expression. He's an ass clown. That's great.
Well, we have 3 ass clowns on the left there. Scott Stringer is useless, and Corey Johnson. You want to talk about an arrogant, nasty hoople. Here's a guy. He's got the only thing he's set on is being the mayor. God help us. This guy, now, you got to remember something. We could have a Giuliani moment here. I'm a firm believer, because people are sick and tired already, that somebody may arise,
Well, Pete, it's like that article that you posted. Someone wrote, all the money is leaving the city. These people have had it. They're not coming back. So you want to defund the police? How about we defund the city by all the big money people leave?
Which is what's happening. And,
yes.
We're in for a rough ride for 2 or 3 years, no matter how you cut it. That said, though, we were in rough shape in the last years of the Dinkins administration. Just, there's the only thing is, but back then, we could still enforce the law. We can't enforce the law right now. Until the cops can get back in, everything that's good in this city since the 1990s is because of public safety.
Yes.
It's not because your kids got smarter. It's not because they picked up more garbage or anything like that. It was because the city became safe.
And the investment dollars came in.
That's when the investments come in.
They go to restaurants. People went to Broadway without having to worry about getting mugged or having a wolf pack beat the shit out of you. But you're right.
Just to let you know, wolf packs are back, and they're all on city bikes now.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. Now they can just rent their bikes with their credit card that they stole a few minutes ago.
There's a little trick to it. If you know what you're doing, you just rip it right out of the holder, which is what they're doing.
Yeah.
But, but it shouldn't exist at all, but it does. And I think we're going to have another Giuliani moment. I don't think it would be Giuliani himself, but I think you're going to see Giuliani won in '93 in a city that's 80% Democrat, and he won. because people were sick and tired of the crime, the corruption, the mismanagement. You know,
But you know how Giuliani won because he killed in Staten Island, and I think he almost won Brooklyn thanks to the Hasids.
Yes.
And he lost Queens, the Bronx, and Manhattan.
Two of the cops voted for him, and then he gave us 3 zeros.
Yes. You know, I'll tell you what. That's my big gripe with him. Will always be. It was actually 2 zeros. That will always be my big gripe with him. But I will give him credit where credit is due. In that, when there was a controversial incident involving a police officer, he was always the guy that came out and said, "Hey, let's do an investigation first. We're not throwing anybody under the bus here," which is something he didn't do. We've been getting, now it's like we're just used to it. You know, de Blasio, boom, right in front of the bus, which happened multiple times during the riots. So I think you may see a groundswell of people from Democrat, Independent, Republican. They're going to just say, listen, I've had it. I've had it with crime. I've had it with the property taxes. I had it with the corruption. And so who that person is, I don't know. There's a couple of people throwing their.
But the head of the fish has to be cut off at Albany. You know, when the fish rots, it rots from the head. And the guy in Albany's no friend to the police either.
No. He's another tin horn grifter. And
hey, do you have like a conspiracy theory about this? Like, why is it that all these major cities, these blue states, are just basically letting anarchy rule and just destroying and having everybody move out of them? People are leaving LA in droves. People are leaving New York in droves, especially New York City. So is there like, why are they doing this on purpose?
I think I wouldn't say a conspiracy per se. I think it's groupthink. I think at the end of the day, they seem to feel that this is going to hurt Trump's reelection chances. I don't know how anybody in their right mind could think rioting and chaos are somehow going to help you win an election. Are they all on the same page? Yeah, they were on the same page. Do they coordinate? No, they probably coordinate within the state, but I just think that's their train of thought. Just, let everything turn to shit. It's bad. It's, because every one of these places that's having these issues, you look at Portland and Seattle, those are 2 big police departments. They're incredibly well trained, and they can put this stuff down. They can put this, I guess, for lack of a better term, insurrection. They can put this down in a heartbeat. The same way the NYPD, when it comes to managing these incidents, if we decide it's over, it's going to end. That's when you need to employ all your assets. You put your mounted people out there, your SRG people. Take out all those toys. We have millions of dollars worth of crowd control devices.
Drones. You get the drones up there, man. It'd be scared shit.
I would go for the big drone. There's certain people, I got to be honest with you. I would go for, actually, you might even want to take it up a step to like an A10. Because.
You know what's funny is that you never see any helicopters out now.
Oh, I had them earlier. You know what happened?
Helicopters that are out on a daily basis showing you who's speeding on the highway. Now, all of a sudden, we have no footage in any of these blue states from a helicopter.
Oh, no, that's an excellent point. You're 100% correct. Absolutely. And a lot of the stuff you see, it's from independent people. It's people putting up their own drones.
I haven't seen an aerial footage during this whole time. And these are people that are up there every single day following a speeder on the highway for the news, just, making fucking a short story. So talk about using resources that are just laying there dormant. And
I don't think it's the cops in the helicopters themselves.
What I'm saying is that we're not using the resources. Like you said.
You're 100% correct. And,
Pete, you said that the NYPD has the equipment, they have the talent, they have the know-how to take down this insurrection, these riots. And we had Chief Anamone on, and he's the architect of disorder control. But if you don't get the support of the mayor,
No, you're done.
you can have the greatest people in place in the world, and you're not going to do a thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anna Moen had the support of Giuliani, and I laugh, the Texas Rangers have a old story where there was a riot in the town, the train pulls in, and one Texas Ranger got off, and they're like, where's everybody else? And they said, one riot, one Ranger. And you know what? Anna Moen, he was that Ranger. He was usually the riot also. He would bring it with him. But everybody knew that whatever was going on was going to end. And it may not look pretty, but it would end. And it would end
it. Yeah,
right there.
The shit is over. Anamone's on board. Car 5 is on the air. It's over. Right?
Car 5. You know what? If you were a patrol supervisor and you heard Car 5 to Central K and he was on your radio division, you went, because you knew.
I remember a detective named Richie Brees told me when he was a cop, this guy boat jacked a boat, and they were chasing they commandeered another boat. They're chasing him, and the patrol sergeant or some captain said, "Terminate that pursuit." And Anamone said, "Keep it going." Authority, chief of department.
Yeah, I had heard him. I heard him on a late tour one night where somebody terminated a pursuit. And I think he may have been upgraded to Car 3 by that time. I forget. Yeah. And he said, Car 3 to Central K. And, you get some guys that are dicks that would key out the mics and stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody keyed them out.
No.
And it was keep it going.
Yeah.
And, he didn't want to hear
it. And have that captain change his underwear and meet me on
exactly. Whoever that captain was just sharded in his pants.
Yeah. It's a different world, Pete. I think we got to sort of wind this down right now. And Mark and I were thrilled to have you on, and we really got an amazing police career. 39 years. I think you should definitely go see a psychologist though soon, because you did 39 years. Crazy, and we want you to enjoy your life. And, you have some amazing stories to tell. Maybe we'll be on another Perfect Murder together on another one of his ID shows.
It was actually a great show. It really was a great show.
Yeah, they canceled it. They were averaging 1.2 million per episode, and they still canceled it. And I was getting my chops as an actor, man. I got nowhere else to go.
Well, I did 4 episodes, but then a sudden realization came to me that I am now typecast, and my future as a Shakespearean thespian was now shattered. I was typecast as the cop.
Hey Pete, what's your Twitter? You said you're active on Twitter, so what's your Twitter?
Pete the Cop.
Pete, I'm gonna befriend you on there.
Without a doubt. Just go on there and you'll enjoy it.
We'll add you on Police Off the Cuff over there. Really? Hey, just so one more reminder, 2 things before we go. First of all, this Saturday is the rally, right, Bill?
Yeah, 12 o'clock it starts at City Hall Park, right? With Scott Lebedo. He painted the blue line down the street in Staten Island. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of great speakers there. Curtis Lee was going to be there. So is the SBA president, President Ed Mullen's going to be there. It's going to be a great event this Saturday down at noon at City Hall. Also, our Patreon. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please help us out. We want to build this thing bigger and better. Police Off the Cuff, and we have 3 tiers there for you. And I'm putting up special episodes just for people that are behind the wall there. And Bill and I are going to be working very, very hard to make sure that we get the word out that you know what, law enforcement, we're good people, man. We're good people. Stop shitting on us. We're good people. We're here for you.
I would just like to real quick say one thing to everybody out there in I guess Zoom world, wherever on the interwebs, thank a cop. If you see a cop, thank a cop. That's lately been my mantra. I know we sometimes used to get uncomfortable with it when people said thank you, but you know what? These cops are putting up with an incredible amount of shit these days. Thank a cop. Let them know they're appreciated. They're going through an incredibly tough time.
Well, Bill and I want to thank a cop. You.
Yeah, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. I mean,
39 years, 2 months.
it's amazing. You know, Pete, they always tell you that old expression, you'll know when it's time to go. And you knew when it was time. I knew when it was time. You know, I didn't really want to leave, I guess, but I just knew for me I had to leave.
Billy, how many times did you hear me say, you know, I had enough of this, I'm leaving? You know, guys used to be like, yeah, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
And I just knew it was time, man. It was a bunch of different things going on in my life at the moment, but you know what? It was time. And
Pete, that's why Bill and I embarked on creating this show. It was to memorialize great cops' careers. And it's expanded, but you know, we always come back to the great stories, and you have a phenomenal story. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for sharing. We'd love to have you back on in the future.
I'd love to.
And thank all our fans out there. You know, we actually do have a pretty large following, and we're growing every day. And as Mark said, I'm gonna start doing a true crime episode that it's only for our Patreon customers. And Mark is gonna start doing a current events episode. And Mark's a real funny. We're both comics, but Mark's a real funny fucking comic. I've just been doing it for 6 years. Mark's been doing it for 23 years. He's a real pro. So he's a
I'll tell you what, Billy, when you walked into the squad, people knew you were there. When you would come in my office.
Hey, Pete, I always tell that story, man. I worked in the 2-6 squad. When he walked in with that long raincoat and that freaking Popeye Doyle hat, oh, shit, what happened now? Something happened.
I always knew Billy was there. When I couldn't see out of my office what was going on, but I would hear him come in and he would say, "Hey, you bucket."
When death walks through the door.
We had some fun. We had some laughs. That's what it's all about, right?
Yes, we did.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All you people listening, thank you very much. Good night now.
Good night.